But Martha, with her sharp tongue and cunning mind, wasn't about to stop. She knew she needed to act fast before James could rally the villagers. One night, she crept into the village square, where she knew a few of the older villagers would gather. She whispered her lies again, but this time, she made sure to twist the truth just enough to make Emily look guilty of something she wasn't. The next day, Emily was confronted by some of the villagers. "We heard rumors about you," one of them said, her voice cold. "You're not the person you pretend to be." Emily felt the weight of their words crushing her. She wanted to explain, to tell them the truth, but her voice caught in her throat. She turned to James, hoping he would stand up for her, but he was already facing Martha, demanding answers. "Why are you doing this, Martha?" James's voice was low, but filled with fury. "Why are you trying to ruin Emily's life?" Martha stood tall, her expression unreadable. "I'm doing what's best for this village. I'm protecting it from people who are untrustworthy." "You're lying," James said, his fist clenched. "And I won't let you tear apart the person I love." Emily watched, her heart pounding. This was it, this was the moment that could change everything. Would the villagers believe her? Would James's love be enough to silence Martha's cruel words? What do you think will happen next? Will James be able to prove the truth, or will Martha's lies tear them apart? The tension in the village square was palpable as Martha stood there, her face calm but her eyes burning with defiance. James stepped forward, his voice steady but filled with determination. "I won't stand by while you destroy everything Emily and I have worked for," he said, looking directly at Martha. "You've tried to control everyone for too long, but I'm done letting you manipulate us." Martha's smile faltered for a moment, but she quickly regained her composure. "You're a fool, James," she sneered. "Emily isn't who you think she is. She's hiding something. I'm just trying to protect you from being blinded by her lies." But James, now filled with anger, turned to the villagers, his voice strong. "Do any of you believe this?" he asked, gesturing to Martha. "Do you really think I'd be fooled by her? She's only trying to tear us apart for her own gain. She's the one with the lies, not Emily." The villagers exchanged uncertain glances, some looking ashamed for even doubting Emily, but others still unsure. Martha, sensing she was losing control, stepped closer to one of the elder villagers, a woman named Agatha, known for her wisdom and sharp eye. "Agatha," Martha said, her voice dripping with sweetness. "I know you've always been a good judge of character. Surely, you can see the truth in what I'm saying. You've known me for years. I've always had this village's best interest at heart." Agatha stood tall, her wrinkled face etched with wisdom and years of experience. She gazed at Martha for a long moment before turning her eyes to Emily. The villagers held their breath as Agatha spoke. "Sometimes," Agatha began, her voice soft but carrying authority, "it's easy to believe a story that fits what we want to hear. But we must also look at the facts, not just the words. And the facts are clear. James stands by Emily, and we've seen the love and respect they have for each other. That speaks louder than any rumor." Martha's expression soured, and she took a step back. "You're all blind," she muttered under her breath. The villagers, now reassured by Agatha's words, began to murmur among themselves. Slowly, they turned away from Martha, choosing to believe in the love and goodness that James and Emily shared. Seeing that her grip on the situation was slipping, Martha's eyes narrowed in fury. She turned on her heel and stormed out of the village square, muttering curses under her breath. "This isn't over," she vowed to herself. "I will make sure they suffer." As Martha disappeared from sight, Emily felt the weight on her chest begin to lift. The villagers, having seen through the lies, began to approach her and James, offering their support. Emily smiled at James, her heart swelling with gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered. I knew you would stand by me. James smiled back, his eyes soft with affection. I'll always stand by you, Emily. We're in this together. The two walked away from the square, hand in hand, their hearts lighter than they had been in days. The village, now more united than ever, began to return to normal. The whispers faded, and Emily could finally breathe again. But as they reached the edge of the village, Emily looked up at James, her expression thoughtful. James, she said quietly, do you think Martha will really give up? James's face darkened slightly, his jaw tightening. I don't know, he replied. But I won't let her tear us apart. We'll face whatever comes, together. As they continued their walk home, the sun set behind them, casting long shadows over the village. The future was uncertain, but Emily and James were no longer afraid. They had each other, and that was all they needed. But Martha, though defeated for now, was far from giving up. She had lost this battle, but her mind was already working on a new plan. If she couldn't tear them apart with lies, she would find another way. And this time, she would make sure it worked. Back at the edge of the village, Martha watched from a distance, her mind swirling with anger and hatred. They think they've won, she whispered to herself, but they haven't seen the worst of me yet. The battle between love and revenge was far from over. The days that followed were filled with a strange peace, but Emily knew that the storm wasn't over. Martha's departure from the village square was only the beginning of what might come. Still, with each passing day, Emily and James found comfort in each other's presence, and the support of the villagers grew stronger. One afternoon, as they walked together in the small garden behind their cottage, Emily noticed James's thoughtful silence. What's on your mind? She asked, pausing to wipe her brow with the back of her hand. James glanced at her, his expression serious. I'm worried, Emily. Martha is dangerous when she's angry, and I fear she's plotting something else. She won't just leave us alone. Emily nodded, her heart heavy. I know. But I also know that together, we can handle whatever comes. We've already proven that we are stronger than her lies. James smiled at her, his hand gently squeezing hers. You're right. But we can't be too careful. We need to keep our guard up. And we need to make sure that if she tries anything again, we are ready. As they spoke, a shadow appeared on the horizon. The figure slowly made its way toward them, and as it drew closer, Emily's heart sank. It was Martha. She was back. James stood up straighter, his body tensing. What does she want now? He muttered. Martha stopped at the edge of the garden, her eyes cold and calculating. I see you two are still together, she said, her voice dripping with venom. But don't get too comfortable. I haven't given up. You'll regret this. Emily stood her ground, her voice unwavering. Martha, we've already been through this. You can't break us apart. Whatever you're planning, it won't work. Martha's smile was twisted, full of malice. We'll see about that, won't we? She replied, her eyes narrowing. I have my ways. You may think you're safe, but there's always a weakness in every person, and I'll find yours. James stepped forward, his tone firm. If you think you can scare us into submission, you're wrong. We are stronger than you think. But Martha was not deterred. She turned and walked away slowly, her words hanging in the air. I'll be back. You won't escape me that easily. As she disappeared into the distance, Emily and James exchanged a glance. We need to stay vigilant, James said, his voice low. I don't trust her. Emily nodded, her resolve hardening. I never let her take away what we've built. But Martha's threat wasn't just idle words. In the days that followed, strange things began to happen. Supplies from the village market went missing, whispers of secrets spread, and more villagers began to turn against Emily and James. It was clear that Martha was working behind the scenes, using every trick at her disposal to turn the village against them. One evening, as Emily and James walked through the village square, they overheard two villagers talking in hushed tones. "Did you hear about the strange fire in the woods?" one asked. "They say it was started by those two, James and Emily. They are trouble." Emily's heart sank. "She's spreading lies again," she whispered. James's fist clenched. "I won't let her get away with this." Determined not to let Martha ruin their lives, Emily and James sought out the village elders. The elders were wise, and they had always been fair to both sides. They had to make sure the truth was heard before Martha's lies took root. That evening, they gathered in the village hall. The air was thick with tension as the villagers whispered amongst themselves. Emily and James stood before the elders, their faces set with determination. James spoke first, his voice strong and steady. "We've been accused of things we didn't do, and we're here to clear our names. Martha has been spreading lies about us, trying to tear this village apart. We need your help." The head elder, a man named Papa Echo, nodded thoughtfully. "We have heard the rumors, James and Emily. But we need proof. We cannot act on mere words. Do you have anything to show us that these accusations are false?" Emily stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. "We know we don't have physical proof, but we have something stronger. We have the truth. Martha has been working in the shadows, trying to turn the villagers against us. She's the one causing the trouble, not us." The villagers murmured among themselves, unsure of what to believe. But Papa Echo stood up, his eyes sharp. "We will not allow this village to be torn apart by rumors and lies. We will investigate this matter thoroughly, and we will find the truth." Martha, lurking just outside the hall, heard the conversation. She had hoped that her lies would have more power, but now, with the elders taking action, she knew that her plan was beginning to unravel. As she watched the village elders make their decision, Martha's face twisted in frustration. This wasn't over. She still had one final card to play. Later that night, as the village lay in peaceful silence, Martha crept to the village well. She had heard whispers of a powerful herb that could bring illness to anyone who drank from the well. It was dangerous, but it was the perfect way to drive a wedge between Emily and the villagers. With a wicked smile, Martha dropped the herb into the well and quickly disappeared into the shadows, her heart racing with anticipation. In the morning, when the villagers gathered around the well, they were shocked to find that the water had turned cloudy and foul-smelling. Whispers spread like wildfire, and once again, the blame was placed on Emily and James. Martha watched from a distance, her heart pounding with excitement. She had done it. The village would turn against them now. But little did she know, Emily and James were ready for this final move. The game had just begun, and they weren't about to let Martha win. The next morning, the village square buzzed with confusion and fear. The villagers stood around the well, inspecting the water, their faces twisted in disbelief. The foul smell filled the air, and the murmur of accusations began to grow louder. Emily and James stood nearby, watching the scene unfold. James's fists were clenched, his jaw tight with frustration. "This is it, Emily," he muttered under his breath. "She's trying to poison the well, ruin us for good." Emily's heart pounded in her chest, but her face remained calm. She knew Martha's plan, and she wasn't going to let it succeed. "We can't let her win," Emily said softly. "We need to find a way to prove her wrong, to show everyone that we are not the cause of this." James nodded, determination flashing in his eyes. "We'll do whatever it takes." As the villagers gathered in a huddle around the well, whispering about the strange occurrence, Emily and James slipped away unnoticed. They made their way to the village elder's house, where Papa Echo was sitting with the other elders, deep in discussion. Papa Echo looked up as they entered. "Oh, James, Emily," he said, his voice grave. "I assume you've heard the news." Emily nodded. "Yes, we have. And we know who's behind it." "Martha." Papa Echo raised an eyebrow, but James spoke first. "She's trying to frame us, blaming us for the poisoned water. But we know it's her doing." The elders exchanged worried glances. "Do you have proof of this?" asked one elder, a woman named Mama Ifeoma. Emily shook her head. "Not yet, but we know she's the one who poisoned the well. We need to act quickly before it's too late." Papa Echo sighed, his eyes filled with a mix of concern and wisdom. "This is a serious accusation. If what you say is true, we must confront Martha, but we must be careful. She has already caused enough harm." James stepped forward, his voice full of resolve. "We are ready to confront her. But we need your help to expose the truth." Papa Echo looked at the other elders, who nodded in agreement. "Very well," he said. "We will gather the village and confront Martha. We'll need to act fast, though, before she has a chance to spread more lies." Emily and James felt a surge of hope. They weren't alone in this fight. With the elders by their side, they knew they had a chance to clear their names. That afternoon, the village square was filled with villagers, all gathered to discuss the mysterious poisoning of the well. Martha stood at the back, her eyes darting nervously as she tried to blend into the crowd. Emily and James stood at the front, their backs straight, ready to speak the truth. Papa Echo stepped forward, his voice carrying through the square. "We have gathered here today to address the strange events surrounding the poison well. We know that there are many rumors circulating, and we will not allow lies to divide this village." The villagers murmured in agreement, and Martha's face turned pale. She could feel the weight of the elders' gaze on her, but she held her ground. Papa Echo continued. "Emily and James have come forward, and they have a claim to make. They believe that the one responsible for this terrible act is none other than Martha." Gasps echoed through the crowd. Martha's eyes widened in shock, and for a moment, she was speechless. The villagers turned to look at her, their eyes filled with suspicion. Emily stepped forward, her voice steady. "We don't want to accuse anyone without reason, but we know that Martha has been spreading lies about us, causing division in the village. She's the one who poisoned the well, and we can prove it." James nodded. "We know what she's capable of. She's been manipulating things from the shadows, and now, she's trying to turn the village against us." Martha's face twisted with anger. "Lies. All lies," she shouted, her voice shaking. "I didn't poison the well. You can't prove anything." The villagers looked uncertain, but Emily didn't back down. "You've been making trouble for us for months, Martha. You poisoned the well to make it look like we were to blame. You've been trying to destroy us." For a moment, there was silence. Then, one of the elders, Mama Ifeoma, spoke up. "We can't let this go unchallenged. We need to test the water from the well. If the water was truly poisoned, we'll know who did it." Papa Echo nodded in agreement. "We will find the truth, no matter what." The villagers quickly began to take samples of the water from the well, and the elders examined it carefully. They found traces of a harmful herb that could only have been placed there by someone who knew what they were doing. The truth was clear. Martha had poisoned the well in an attempt to frame Emily and James. Papa Echo turned to Martha, his expression stern. "Martha, you have been caught in your lies. You tried to destroy these two and ruin the peace of our village. For this, you will face the consequences." Martha's face flushed with shame, but instead of backing down, she lashed out. "I did what I had to do. I needed to protect myself, and you all stood by them. You think you can just push me out like this?" James stepped forward, his voice firm. "You've caused enough damage, Martha. it's time for you to leave the village, before you do any more harm." The villagers, once divided, now stood united against Martha. The elders had spoken, and there was no room for more lies. Martha's time in the village was over. As she was escorted out, Emily and James exchanged a quiet look of relief. The storm had passed, and peace began to return to the village. But they knew their journey wasn't over. There would always be challenges ahead, but together, they could face anything. With the support of the villagers and the wisdom of the elders, Emily and James knew that their bond was stronger than ever. And as they walked back to their cottage that evening, hand in hand, they were ready to embrace whatever came next, knowing that together, they were unstoppable. As Emily and James returned to their cottage, the evening sky was painted with shades of orange and pink. The weight that had pressed down on them for so long was finally lifting, but they knew that peace didn't come without sacrifice. The village, once again, was at ease, and the rumors that had once spread like wildfire were now put to rest. But life in the village wasn't always simple. The elders had warned them that even after the truth had been revealed, there would still be those who resented their victory. However, Emily and James were determined to move forward, to rebuild what had been broken and to restore the peace their family had once known. That night, as they sat together on their small porch, watching the stars appear one by one, Emily spoke softly, her voice full of hope. "James, do you think things will ever be the same again?" James glanced at her, his smile gentle. "I think things will be better," he said. "We've learned that truth and loyalty matter more than anything. We'll rebuild the village, not just with our hands, but with our hearts. And we'll make sure that the evil that tried to tear us apart never returns." Emily nodded, feeling the warmth of his words sink into her heart. "We are stronger now. We've made it through the worst." Just then, there was a soft knock on the door. James stood up and opened it, surprised to find Papa Echo standing there, his face solemn. "Come in, Papa," James said, motioning for him to sit. Papa Echo stepped inside, and after a moment of silence, he spoke. "I've come to offer my thanks, and to remind you that your journey doesn't end here. The village is safe, but we must remain vigilant. There are always challenges ahead, but you both have shown the kind of strength this village needs." Emily and James listened intently, their eyes focused on the elder. He continued, "Martha's departure was just the beginning. We must work together to ensure that nothing like this happens again. We must create a new path, one where truth, kindness, and unity are our guiding principles." James clenched his fist, determination in his eyes. "We will, Papa. We won't let the village fall into darkness again." Papa Echo smiled warmly, his eyes twinkling with pride. "I know you will. And I believe that together, we will not only restore what was lost, but we will make this village stronger than it has ever been." With that, Papa Echo stood, ready to leave. "Continue to lead with courage," he said, before stepping back into the night. The door closed softly, and Emily and James were left in the stillness, their hearts full of purpose. The next chapter of their lives had begun. As weeks passed, the village grew stronger. People returned to the well, grateful for the efforts of Emily and James, and life slowly returned to normal. The villagers celebrated with feasts and dances, grateful for the unity they had regained. However, Martha's shadow still lingered, a reminder of the darkness that had threatened to tear everything apart. But with every passing day, Emily and James proved that the light of truth and love could shine brighter than any lie. One evening, as they walked through the village, Emily looked up at the sky, a smile on her lips. "I think the future is bright, James. For all of us." James squeezed her hand. "As long as we have each other, there's nothing we can't face." And with that, they looked forward, hand in hand, to a future built on the foundations of truth, courage, and love. The village was whole again, And though challenges would always come, Emily and James knew that they would face them together, no matter what.